Hello everyone and welcome back to a slightly wintry, cloudy Riverview metropolitan area. Now in the previous episode of Riverview, we implemented this massive medical complex as a result of the most recent vote, attached a small university to it as well as a research development. And I did mention that it isn't seeing all that much use yet. But a few of you guys commented that maybe I should remove the nearby medical center since I've got a new hospital here. And I'll be honest, at first I was like, what nearby medical center? It's the one right here. It's right across the road. Yeah. So I'll delete that. Thank you guys for the suggestion. This does leave us with a once again a publicly owned lot right at the heart of Riverview downtown. So obviously my question is now, what are we building here? If you've got any suggestion what the city should redevelop this into, please let me know in the comments. A park, public institutions, more schools, maybe sell it off to private investors. Let me know. Today we're gonna kick off by implementing what's probably gonna be the biggest public transit line, at least by the length of the route and maybe the amount of stations as well in Riverview, as I'll be creating a line that starts at the Riverview Airport, serves Southside, serves much of the inner city core of Riverview, then crosses the bridge here to serve Eastport, downtown New Chelsea, which we have here, much of New Chelsea's suburban landscape, some of these suburbs here, and then it's going to terminate at Northport. And this line in particular is one that was suggested multiple times, not just through the comments, but also these very elaborate, awesome suggestions and transit plans that people emailed me. So I hope everyone is going to be happy that we finally get to implement it. Anyways, I've been rambling for quite a while now. We've got some public transportation to build. Super quick, non-invasive reminder to like this video if you enjoy my content, because that really helps out. Thank you. Let's get going. Why did these guys leave again? Lack of entertainment. Lack of entertainment. Lack of entertainment. I'm very sorry that Mill Springs, which is a rural suburb, isn't all that entertaining. Why did you move here? Anyways, there's nothing better for a Ponzi scheme capitalist society than just demolishing this, getting some new construction in, prop up those economic figures. Let's do a little assessment of the current public transit layout before we move on with this new line here. I apologize if there's an FPS loss as we enable this view here. Sometimes my FPS tanks when I have the transit view enabled. But we've got bus lanes selected, so that's awesome. Let's just see. We've actually got pretty decent coverage of much of East Riverview. We've even got the red line, which is primarily rural for a long stretch of its route. It serves the suburb and small office center out here in Kendrick as well, so that's all looking pretty fine. We do need a bit more coverage here in East Riverview, but so far we've got the major job centers down here in Sterling and Barlow Ridge covered, as well as the primary high density areas. So things obviously get really bad as we cross the rivers here. New Chelsea has no coverage despite being home to maybe 15,000 people or something. And the same is the case with Eastport, which, I mean, it's an older port area. It's an inner city or like an inner river port, which can only serve smaller barges and river cargo traffic. But there is still almost 3,000 jobs here, so it's not exactly in a massive decline. We are going to rezone parts of this to commercial and office and probably a residential redevelopment to be really realistic as we move forward. But for now, nothing's really gonna happen here. So we definitely need some public transportation here, allow people to actually get here without having to rely on their personal vehicles. As we move north, the terrible situation gets, I mean, you can't really get worse than not having public transit, so it doesn't really get worse, it just continues to be crappy. We do have some actual stops here because there used to be a line, which I guess I rigged or deleted as part of a massive redevelopment effort up here. Yeah, leave that to me. But we definitely just need to cover much of these areas because I mean, it is a suburban in nature, but it is actually pretty densely built up. We've got a row of well-developed high-tech office buildings here alongside the Linden Express. We've of course got this area here, which is actually rather dense as well. So it really does make sense getting some good coverage here. Of course, as we move further north, it's an obvious choice to integrate the new bus line up here in Northport. We can use the existing small transit hub we've created up here as well to easily integrate it. And Northport, it's been said many times before, but there's 15,000 jobs up here, so any connection to here is a pretty good idea. So something I enjoy about mapping out public transit lines in Cities 2 is that you can go at it from a few different approaches. You can basically just create your line by using waypoints where you don't have to establish any stations, and then you can move through the entire line and add stations where you think they're a good fit. Or you can of course create the stations up front and then easily connect to them. So I guess there's not really one solution or approach that's better than the other, but I think for starters I would like to actually just try and map out some stations, because I think if we can locate some high density areas and some major arterials that make a lot of sense providing coverage to, then that's probably a good start, and we can of course always tweak and adjust it. So let's just get this overlay out of the way while we still have this selected. This is part of the legacy flavor mod. You're able to bind a key so that you can actually remove the overlay while working. You can do the same for zoning. This view is not all that pleasant, but if we toggle it, then it's much easier. So there's a big suggestion for that particular mod. Anyways, we've got some stops here. We have an older stop here we're not using anymore. I think the placement makes quite a bit of sense. We have sort of a small downtown here in North New Chelsea, I guess you could say. We've got lots of shops alongside the row houses here, so I think it makes sense to continue with this stop, or at least keep it. We can always revamp if need be. We also have a stop alongside this small suburban street here, which I don't think makes a ton of sense for this initial line here. We can always create an additional line to serve some of the less busy areas with maybe like a smaller amount of buses and less frequent services, maybe not having night service as well. But I think some of these stops here, they just don't really make a lot of sense. So we're gonna remove this one at the very least, as well as these two up here, because we want to serve the Linden Express instead. Now the question is if we should move this stop out here alongside the Linden Express so that we can easily serve this redeveloped area here, or if we should just allow the bus to take a bit of a detour, maybe even have a stop. Wait, we can't turn left here. We'll have to wait for this crossing, but maybe that's okay. I think I'm going to add a couple of stops here then. But I'd like to see if I can just create an additional node for this part of the Linden Express. Just by double clicking here with a smaller road. That worked. And the reason I did that is otherwise the like extra lane for the dedicated bus lane will just take up a ton of space, which always ends up looking a little odd, I find. So I think having a stop down here and then connecting it up with the established pathways, we've already got like a recreational space here which we can easily connect. It would probably be fine. So let's just add 2 shelters here and we'll see if that gets the traffic we'd like. So it's gonna turn left here, and then I'm thinking that we're gonna, let's see, what's the most densely populated? It's kind of equal on both sides of the road, so I guess my suggestion would be that we move back onto the Linden Express here then, adding in some additional stops here. Or maybe here, and then we can connect with some pathways. Let's just do that. I'll see if I can get in an additional node. That would be nice. And where am I? Yeah, that didn't really work. Anyways, we'll just get these stops created here. I'll have to manually remove the trees in just a second. So, do we need an additional stop before we enter Northport? I think not. I think not. It would have to be alongside this national road segment here, which I don't really want. And we could go through this area though. Maybe we should actually do that because we can connect to the roundabout here through this small lane. That does mean we'll lead some bus traffic through this residential area. But maybe that's fine. So let's just get a stop here on either side of this small commercial center we've established here. And then we've got plenty of stops here in Northport, so I assume we can use those. Alright, so we'll of course need to cover the dense inner city of New Chelsea, and I think someone suggested having stops alongside Chelsea Boulevard here, which makes a ton of sense. Let's just judge the distance here. So we've got stops here, which we might have to just move over here. We'll see, that might be necessary. I don't know how long people actually want to walk to reach a transit stop though, but we'll see. I think it makes a lot of sense to maybe just have a stop on either side of the Linden Express here before we turn left or right respectively and go down Chelsea Boulevard. And we'll need a couple of stops here. The density increases. We'll have a very central stop down here, I guess. Somewhere alongside here would make sense. Do we need more than one central stop in New Chelsea? Or I think that's gonna be sufficient. So we'll just add a stop on either side of the main boulevard here. And we have stops here, which means that I guess we'll have additional stops here right before we move underneath the Riverview Express. And that just, that takes up a lot of parking space. I might try and adjust these nodes a bit, but I guess for now we're just mapping things out. And then we've got good old Eastport. Need to think for a second here. How can the buses actually enter? So we've got this crossing here underneath the, I don't even remember which highway this is, I-25 I think. But it's very small, shallow roads. But I guess that is actually going to work. So if I just pause, and we have two stops through Eastport, or maybe just a single one, it's actually sufficient. And I need a place for the buses to be able to stop without causing too much of a traffic issue. So I'm going to create the stops here alongside the street where they get dedicated spots, and hopefully they are big enough for the buses to not block cargo traffic. And I think that stop is probably sufficient for starters. I may have to connect a pathway so that we connect this upper segment. There's, as you guys can see, there's quite a bit of elevation difference here. Connect this upper segment of Eastport with the lower segment. And then as we hover over the inner city of Riverview, we've got a ton of available stops to use, including a stop at the main transit hub. But I think the initial plan I laid out in the beginning of the episode is actually wrong. The suggestions I got by email that almost all agreed was actually to serve this suburban area here, Sunrise Corner, and then cross the bridge here into Bedford, which is also a very dense area that doesn't really have direct service coverage right now. Instead of going down the main avenue here, because it has bus and tram service. So we're probably gonna need a main stop here in the very dense part of Bedford. So I'm thinking right around here would make sense, and seems to be serving quite a large area and improved the happiness of the people there. And then we do have a main suburban street going through Sunrise Corner here, which we can use. And once again, we might have to create like a pedestrian bridge or something to cross here to really get some good use out of the stop here. So let's just see the distance. Stops here. This is very low density. Then maybe just one main stop here. I think that would make sense. We can do it on either side of the road just to mix it up a bit. And then given the current demand, not that I can satisfy it in any way, but given the current demand, then maybe just getting in a bit of a small commercial hub out here in Sunrise Corner would make sense. So we're just gonna clear out for a bit of commercial, switch to the European theme because they are sufficiently generic to work in tandem. Get rid of this stuff, and we've got our stop covered. Then let's see, we need to get onto, what is this, Madison Street? Somewhere. Or alternatively, oh, it's gonna be, if we want to serve the airport and we attempt to cover South End, the very most southern out of the metro area, then we are gonna have to take a bit of a detour to actually cover that, but I think that's fine. There's so much coverage in Southside already. So let's actually get a stop down here in South End. Because we've got very good train station connection here through these elevated paths. I think this is gonna be good. So the stop on the right side of the road, we're gonna right down here so that we don't create a super awkward position for the buses here. And then I guess this stop we can just add here. And then we've got this stop and stops all the way to the airport to connect to. So I guess we've actually got the stops we need now. May need a few adjustments, but we'll see. I think for starters, we should actually just map out this route and then we'll see how it actually performs. Because it's all just gonna be guesswork up until then. So we'll create a new route starting at 186 Beechwood Street, which is the loop covering the Riverview Airport. And we'll add a stop here at 392, and then we'll turn left here to serve Foggy Street once, and twice we'll turn right so that we can enter this suburban corner here, which is going to be, it's now going to be a bit of a commercial hub, so it makes a bit extra sense. Mulberry Street, as it's called. We're gonna cross the bridge into the inner city area and serve Bedford. And then let's see what makes sense here. Does it make sense to avoid the main hub here and just use Sunset Street? Or actually use the hub so that we also get some usage out of these on and off ramps that I spent a lot of time trying to create? I think we're gonna do both, and then we'll see if we completely overload our transit hub here. So I need to add the stops on the right side here so that we've got an easy way in and an easy way out. So I think I'm gonna use this spot here because it's currently unused, and it should, yeah, it's going to allow for an easy entrance onto the bridge here. As we cross that, I'm just gonna actually just add the stops now, and then we can use waypoints to adjust the actual route the buses take if there are like very, very small lanes and sharp turns where the bus realistically probably wouldn't be able to navigate, but we'll see. I'm just gonna map them out. And we're moving up here and serving this part. So I think I mean, from an initial look, this line should be pretty good. We're serving some small commercial hubs that currently aren't being served at all. And we're connecting a really large part of the city. So I think that's pretty positive. We'll see how it actually pans out. We'll just add the stop here, and then I'm just going to connect it the other direction. A little less exciting. So I guess we're actually skipping the transit hub in the other direction because we don't really have great infrastructure to support the additional stop. And all the other buses also only have one stop here, so I guess it makes sense, although realistically you can only then take this new line in one direction from the hub. I don't know if I'm breaking some regular transit rules here. If you guys know, let me know in the comments if there's a better way of doing that. But I think for now I'm gonna have to skip that stop to kind of adhere to the policy of just one stop at the hub. But it does make this line a bit different from the rest, I guess. Anyways, we are just about having it fully connected now and can complete the route. I know, I have to find a better naming scheme, and I know I've gotten suggestions for this. I just haven't checked up yet. So we'll just go Riverview Airport, Northport, the line 7. And let's just see what the game tells us. It wants to assign 24 vehicles. Oh, wow, let's just try with 12, and then we can increase that as we move along. And yeah, I just like to assign as few as possible, because we've got this horrible situation where they just spawn next to each other, and then it's going to take forever for them to actually kind of branch out on different parts of the line. I think there's actually a mod that enables you to assign exactly the amount of vehicles you want, so you can get out of this situation by just starting by assigning 1, waiting a bit, assigning 2, waiting a bit, and so on and so forth. I might actually need to get that, but I think we're just gonna start with 12, and then we'll see how this new RTA 7 line actually manages. Although, speaking of the line, there was an issue somewhere that I need to solve. Yeah, it's here. So for some reason, I think I just need to add an additional waypoint maybe. Let's see, can I just get that up here and add that here instead? Something like that. That should work fine, right? I don't know why I didn't prefer this route. It's shorter. I'm assuming maybe the corners are too tight. I don't think the game actually simulates that. Anyways, it's a bit of an easy fix with the waypoints. And otherwise, the line seems to make a decent amount of sense. We're skipping this stop here. I think that's fine. This can easily turn into a bit of a bottleneck. And then we're pretty much covering everything else. The reason I'm checking this is that if you are a regular viewer, you will know that I have a tendency to just straight up mess up the transit lines I lay up so that trams loop themselves and whatnot. So yeah, I'm not great at this, but I think everything looks all right. So I'm just gonna let the simulation run for a bit so that we can kind of evaluate the situation and see if the line actually functions and if we need more vehicles. Now, while we wait for this new bus line to settle, I'm happy to say that I think I found a solution for the demographic issues and zoning issues we've been encountering in Riverview for the past many episodes. So to provide a bit of context, we've been losing a lot of population, and zoning demand meters has been all over the place and kind of weird. Even though we've been zoning new areas, we have been providing more services, better infrastructure, upgrading public transportation, and generally people across the city are very happy. I don't think I have a single district that isn't. So I got a little desperate in looking for solutions to this and asked you guys for suggestions, and as always, you absolute chats actually knew what was up. So I just want to highlight these comments here suggesting I look into some of the mixed row zones, these custom zones I've been using in the city, as they may actually be causing the issue. So I started doing some digging and I grabbed this InfoLoom mod, which is just fantastic. We're gonna continue using this, by the way. But the cool thing here is this demographics tab. It provides a lot more details than what we at least easily have accessible through the vanilla UI. And there's some very interesting stuff going on here. So first off, this mod is telling me that my population has actually reached more than 100,000, and it probably happened several episodes ago. The big reason that we see this number in a continuous decline is that the homeless population of Riverview is 18,000 people, which just doesn't make any sense to me at all, because we don't have any homeless camps or tents or any of like the graphical visualization of a high homeless count anywhere in the city. So where are all these people? Well, unfortunately, it turns out that there seems to be a bug with the mixed use row house zones that we've used extensively, especially up here in Northside. All these white boxes here are basically where I've used these custom zoning types. And the reason they are white boxes now is that I've actually disabled these mods because they basically cause this issue. And I'm gonna load into a save in just a few seconds where I have gone through the entire city, removed all of these. I know that the author is working on investigating and looking into getting a fix, but for now I've had to remove all this and I'm gonna show you guys the results. Alright, I'm back and our population is even lower. It's still dropping massively and our homeless count is even higher. But the reason for this is that I've just gone through and removed all assets from these custom zones. So that's why we are seeing like an immediate short-term increase in the amount of homeless people and a substantial short-term drop in population. But in a minute or two, this is going to reverse and the trend is going to completely change. A couple of minutes have passed and if we have a look, everything has completely changed, and Sunset Corner, which we zoned in the previous episode, is starting to fill out and nobody would even move in. Let's check our demographics for the city. Homeless count is sitting at around 11,000, but it's dropping quickly, so we'll probably even out at around 100,000 population maybe. I don't know, but oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy I got this fixed. I was getting super desperate. And I mean, the sun is even shining. There are no more clouds. This is a sign, and I'm just highlighting this. I'm not cheating here. I mean, I like to cheat so that it's always sunny in Riverview, but this time around, it's actually sunny. And I guess we could use some of this time to take a deeper dive into this InfoLoom mod because it's actually really, really cool. So obviously, this demographic tab here is really cool. We've got like a full, I guess, what is this? Like an age pyramid of every single citizen in the entire metro area, as well as their occupation. So we can see we've actually got we've got a citizen that's almost 120 years old, which is pretty crazy. I guess this is the age distribution. And as you guys can probably see, most people retire around the age of 75. And this is likely because we've been using the population rebalance mod, because otherwise I think it would be 85 for vanilla. And we see that, people start entering the workforce at around the age of 14, which I guess is pretty realistic. You know, the first couple of low-paid jobs at the local gas station to afford your books and stuff like that. And then there's a really weird lag of people in their early 20s. I don't know if why is that? Is that when I started using some of these assets? I don't know, but it's looking pretty weird. And then we've got a couple of massive generations here. And as I had kind of expected, and I've mentioned before with the population rebalance mod, we have a very large group of people here that are not gonna be part of the workforce for that much longer. So that's really worrisome. We've still got demographic, I guess you could say, issue that we need to work on resolving. We need to keep the Ponzi scheme going, getting more people into the city. But I'm just gonna let the simulation run for a while now so we can see where it kind of settles, because it should give a much more realistic picture of where Riverview is, and probably cause more traffic and more people on the streets as well. And I really just want to stress, no hard feelings towards any creators at all. Creating custom content is time consuming, it's not that rewarding, and bugs and unintended consequences are bound to happen, especially in these early days of Cities Skylines 2 modding. I'm just so happy to have this ecosystem where people on their own for free spend so much time creating awesome stuff, and I'm just hoping, of course, for a fix for these particular mods, because I really love them and they've just been a perfect fit in the city. Anyways, we've got a bus line to check up on, so let's just go ahead and grab the right infographic and check the usage. And ooh, things actually looking pretty well. And it is the longest bus line or transit line we have in the city. I assume it's longer than the tram line as well. Oh yeah, it is. And 35 stops, no less can do. And line usage 85%, so that's looking pretty good. And we see that not all the buses are full currently out on the route, but it's looking pretty good. And plenty of stops at, whoa, 366. Plenty of stops have lots of passengers. 747, where is the stop? Wow, okay. Well, I mean, I guess that was to be expected. This is a very dense area, and this is the first taste of public transit that the citizens of New Chelsea has ever had. So maybe it's a novelty effect and they'll get bored at some point in time. But I think this is even worse or better, I guess you would say. Damn, that is a lot of people waiting here. But I guess this area is also quite dense, actually. But what this can also help us identify, of course, are the stops with no passengers or very few passengers. And the visual distance here between the stops is actually an attempt to represent the actual distance within the map. So, for instance, this is 472 Umber Street, which would be this stop, south going direction. And this next stop, to 74 Crest Street, will have to be this one up here. And these are, you know, geographically very closely located. And then there's a bit of an extra distance before we get down to 420 Crest Street. So I assume we might be able to just remove one of these stops if they're seeing so little use. But I think before I'm gonna do any alterations or changes to the RTA7 line, I should probably provide some of the pedestrian infrastructure at some of these stops that we talked about when I actually created them. So I'll just move in here, we'll disable some snapping and just get some proper connections going here. And it's going to complain, but there's always an Anarchy fix for complaints. And I think we're just gonna do like a super simple setup like this. Should provide for an easier connection for the a couple of thousand people, or 1,200 that live here in Bedford Downs. So that's the one, but we had other stops as well that might use an additional path. This place is actually relatively well connected, although I guess an elevated like a pedestrian bridge here would actually be a pretty good idea, because this is a pretty high speed national type road that cuts through. So let's just see if we can create something that looks a little interesting. We'll go up by 5 meters, should be sufficient for most vehicles. And then just get the crossing done, enable some snapping. See if we can find a good snapping point. 9% decline should be plenty for most people to handle. And we'll just add another connection here. And I'm just gonna quickly see if a bridge upgrade is that's a chunky little bridge. Yeah, I guess we're just leaving as is. The default actually looks pretty good, so I think that's a good little change. And we've got some pathways here. I guess we can just, I mean, there are paths alongside the small alleys here, but it's a very rural area here, so I'm just gonna create like just a little extra path. Just a little extra Bob Ross path. Alright. Now there is also a stop here at this end of Crest Street. There are two actually, and they are fairly populated despite not adding easy to use paths for some of the residential areas. So once again, just adding a few quick paths. Barely counts as detailing, but it's just enough to add a bit of interest to the area, and of course they have a functional purpose as well. And I want these stops to have an accurate representation of the amount of people we might expect to use them, and not be hindered by whether the distance from this house to this stop is just a little too long due to the extra route you have to take. So here we might just go for a bit of a curvy design, so that it also has a bit of a recreational purpose maybe. And I think we even need to adjust the stop here alongside Umber Street, because there are so many people ganging up here that they're going to wreck the traffic situation. So I wonder if we can just grab this one and just move it over to this segment here, although we do have a parking lot. But I assume if we add a stop to this segment, we should be fine. We're gonna see these people disperse in panic in just a second when the simulation wakes up. Oh, there we go. And that's hopefully going to allow them to spread out just a little more. And I guess this parking lot just doesn't really make sense. It's too big. It gets in the way, so let's just get a bit of mixed use, and then we'll go for some row houses. Maybe even medium density. So happy to have some zoning demand back. And I think with this extra demand pressure, while we are already here, we might as well just upzone this, I'd say, to some row house units, because these single family houses are looking a little out of place here, I guess. So I'll just be adding an additional road here, and then we'll do a bit of upzoning. And I'm hopeful I can just do something like this to force the zoning to behave the way I want it to. I can't, because it's not actually aligned to Valley Street. Oh, it is. Never mind. But you know, sometimes the game will just tell you that, yeah, that's not going to work. Like over here, for instance. Yeah. But there's of course a way out of that issue, just adding a path. And then down here we can add a key wall to this segment of the Linden Express. That should flip all the zoning towards, what's it called, Cozy Lane. Oh, that's so nice. And then let's just get that all filled up. And it seems that the efficiency of the new line is increasing, approaching 100%. So maybe due to the amount of passengers, at least at some of the more important stops, we should increase the assigned vehicles ever so slightly. So if we just bring this up to 19 and get 7 more buses out on this line, I'll be monitoring how that handles the actual load. And I guess it's a good time to just do a fresh little checkup at our bus depots. So we've got this relatively new one in Northport, and we've got plenty of capacity. There's 19 buses here that we can still dispatch, so that should be fine. I guess while we're up here, it's hard to ignore that I've got a bit of a electricity issue here. Most of Northport is shut down now, which I guess I have to fix immediately. So let's see, we've got the Riverview incineration plant, which is working at full capacity, but is overloaded. Oh, but I don't understand. Shouldn't the rest of the electricity just be imported? I'm super dependent on importing lots of my electricity needs. But oh, let's just check this. So we've got a transformer here. We've got a big cable running here, by the way, connecting to 2 neighboring cities. And we've got a transformer station down here, and we've got one here. And both of these have this electricity bottleneck logo shown. So let's just have a look underground. We've got a single cable here connecting the transformer station to this grid. So if I connect one more, is that just going to switch the problem to somewhere? Yeah. That's very interesting. I haven't really played much with this mechanic here, but I guess that makes sense, because this transformer station has to import a very large amount of electricity, maybe half of this, and it's only delivering that to a single street, which has a single cable running underneath, supporting much of this part of Riverview, and we are right next to downtown, so I'm guessing there's a pretty high demand here. But the question then is, if I connect up this underground cable here to this segment here, is that then gonna work? Can I just make this connection here. And let's just let the simulation run for a bit, see if this registers. That actually worked. That actually, I'm just gonna... the FPS is so low when I have these different views up. Please, can I get out of the underground view? Thank you very much. That actually seemed to help, but I guess this raises the question if we should build some additional power plants in Riverview, since we're so dependent on importing it, which I guess feels a bit odd for a city of this size. Yeah, I think I might build a coal power plant here. A clean coal power plant. We've got railway connection, we've got the river and the port facilities, which we could expand, so we have multiple ways of importing the coal we'd be needing. Just a thought. Anyways, I think a good end goal for this episode is reaching 100,000 population. We may have to just zone a little extra residential here and there, which honestly isn't too bad of a task. I'm just happy to finally have some zoning demand again. But I think before I do that, I'm just gonna check up on some of the other bus lines, because it seems like some of the other lines is seeing some pretty massive usage as well. It seems especially the 6E line, which if you recall is a direct express line from downtown Riverview across Love Island and then connecting to downtown East Riverview, is seeing some pretty insane use, considering it's only 6 buses and 4 stops, but I mean it is an express line. Unfortunately, I cannot increase the amount of vehicles assigned to this line, even though the current ones are even above capacity. But yeah, maybe I need to get this mod that gives a little more freedom in assigning vehicles. Maybe that would allow me to maybe bump it up to 8 or 10. I think there is enough demand to actually handle it. Usage has reached 100 now for the new line recreated, and it is now by a good margin the most popular line in the city. So I guess this is also a shout out to those of you that sent me content or sent me these elaborate plans on where to place bus lines, because you guys don't know it, but I know that several of you actually suggested this specific line, and it really does seem to work out quite well. Anyways, the RTI 5 has also surpassed 100%, and it's a bit of a weird situation when I have some buses that are empty and some that are completely full, but in general the usage is very high, so we may just have to tweak this up to 14, see how that works. We'll grab another look. We've got the very long RTA 3, the green line as well, which is our second most busy line. Second busiest would probably be proper English, but leave that to me to butcher that up. And it's also at a much lower amount of assigned vehicles than the game probably suggested initially when we created it. So we're just gonna bump that to 18. And I think that's going to do for now. It seems the population is going to reach 100,000 without me interfering at all, but I've been rambling so much in this episode, so I'm not gonna cheat you guys out of just a bit of time lapse, so I'll be wrapping up with a bit of residential development. Alright, so it's not like these new areas are gonna really make an impact on the population figure, but the growth is just still firing away, and we've crossed 100,000, which is, I guess, quite a milestone, although it probably happened. It actually happened many episodes ago without me knowing. But anyways, it's nice to finally get there. So, pretty cookie cutter, low density. This one probably built during like the 80s or 90s, so the first spur of McMansion architecture. I mean, it's a bit cookie cutter, but the trees are actually nice and pretty well grown. If we check the other area, then I guess it's pretty obvious what this is. This is the American dream, right? Own your own house, close to your neighbors. It's obviously a more modern development. There isn't all that much landscaping, and there isn't a thick layer of old nice trees here. So yeah, it's you know, this is a microcosmos of Houston or most other metro areas in the US. But I like how it actually turned out, you know, considering what I tried to achieve here. So it's always fun to find it to manually place down some of these suburban developments. Anyways, that is actually going to be it for this episode. So primarily focused on this new bus route, which I'm very happy we implemented. It was one of the more frequent suggestions to have a line that covers this large previously unserviced area, and judging by the usage, it's been very efficient. This is not the last bus line we'll build or the last piece of public transit infrastructure in general, but it was nice getting back to it and getting the implementation done. And of course, very nice to fix the issue that has kind of been plaguing the city for a handful of episodes. I was getting a bit desperate, so I'm very happy to figure out that there's actually a slight bug at play here that we could fix, because I didn't know what else to do. But that is going to be it. So really looking forward to some suggestions for this lot here, now that we've developed the still almost unused hospital, but I guess it did help to remove the medical clinic right across the street. Thank you guys. But yeah, really looking forward to some of the suggestions. I am going to shoot some cinematics now, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.